you're ready to go.
Okay, well, don't be surprised. One of these shows, I am sitting out in the driveway and I have a ramen.
And you're eating your noodles? Yeah.
And I film live from the driveway. It is possible. Don't laugh.
Marty, I've learned with you everything's possible. Okay, so everybody, good afternoon from New Jersey in my case. Welcome to It May Interest You to Know. My name is Toni Marcolini. I'm an attorney and a professor here. And John Hartmann is joining me as my co-host, who's also a noted criminal attorney and author. And I have Martin Mongiello, former White House chef, executive chef at Camp David, and just all around noted historian and good guy. So today, in our quest to cover things that just interest us, and we hope interest you, we want to talk about a case that literally was decided. I mean, the ink is still wet on the paperwork, just decided by the United States Supreme Court, Van Buren versus the United States. And let's get into a little bit. For those of you who are not familiar with the case, let me talk about just, I guess, a background. So it happens in Georgia, and there's a police officer who I guess you could say needs money. He wants some kind of a loan, and they have a local, can I say, well-known criminal? I don't know if that's the right way to describe him. But so Alba, he's a pretty well-known criminal. I mean, the police department tells the police officers to stay away from him for the most part. However, this officer befriends him and ultimately goes to him for some money. And the Alba believes that he's being blackmailed, if you will, by this officer who befriends him. So he goes to the authorities, they set up like an FBI sting to determine whether or not that is what is happening. First, Alba goes back and Van Buren asked the officer for a drug deal, I want to say, to be involved in a drug deal, look the other way. And the officer does turn him down. And then he goes back and he says, all right, well, can you just get me some information on this girl? And
a stripper, allegedly.
A stripper, right. And he runs her plate for Alba and gives him the information, texts him what he knows or what he has by accessing the computer system for the police department to gain information about the woman.
Who's an undercover cop.
Right. Who's an undercover
police officer.
Right. So at the end of the day, the police wind up arresting him based upon just him engaging in that way. I mean, because then he took money, and it wasn't even a lot of money. I want to say it was
$6,000.
Yeah, $6,000. So he takes he gets money from the Alba, and he gives him the information. He accesses the computer database for the police department, and he gives him the information. So of course, with the sting, they arrest him. And the interesting part, I mean, he winds up appealing the conviction. But the interesting part comes in is what happens when you have access to information by virtue of your job that may be confidential or sensitive, and you use it for purposes that are not related to your work. So, yeah, if you're going to look up a possible suspect, if you're in the middle of an investigation, sure, that's what the database is there for. But can you use it to like run your daughter's potential boyfriend? Like, well, this guy wants to date my daughter, so let me run his information and get access to it. Are you able to do that, to use information, computer databases and the like that you're lawfully? I mean, you're not hacking. I mean, you're lawfully in that position.
Right.
But can you do that for unlawful purposes, for purposes beyond which the employer intended it? And I would think it would be no different than if you ran a bank. I mean, or worked in a bank rather, and somebody came into your path who you're in the middle of a divorce, and your husband or your wife's divorce attorney happens to bank at your bank, or their new significant other banks at your bank. Can you access to see
Right.
to see what's it look? I mean, even though you have access to it lawfully.
This is sounding very familiar to an incident on board a submarine with an admiral yelling at the top of his lungs who had a top secret clearance. And I used to tell people all the time, you can have a top secret. There's many levels of top secret. I had a Yankee White, the highest top secret you can have, but it doesn't mean you get to go in the radio room if they're doing something right now. They'll ask you at the door, what's your need to know? Explain your need to know. You have the clearance, okay, but what is your need to know? Because we've got some stuff out right now, and you can raise your voice all you want. You open this beep, 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 door right now, boy, and then try to intimidate and emasculate people. But if you don't have the need to know, the little pissant who's an E5 petty officer can deny the admiral from coming in because you cannot prove your need to know the information. So even though you're cleared to access it and look at that level of information, you cannot prove your need to know. What is your need to know to come in here and see this information? And sometimes it infuriates senior leaders, Toni, even at the nuclear level.
Sure. But I mean, in this instance, the court had to look at, I think, in a more day-to-day way. All right. And not everybody is going to be dealing with secrets of national security, but you certainly may be dealing with information that's relevant to your friends or your family, but has nothing at all to do with your job.
It's gotta be tempting.
It's very tempting, right? John, if somebody comes to date your daughter, I mean,
you want to run that background check.
Are you going to access that information and run it?
Absolutely. Yep.
And is that a criminal violation? And that's what really the court had to deal with. If you're accessing information that's lawfully in your possession, but it's not for the purposes of the job or why they're allowing you access, is that a crime? And that's exactly what the Supreme Court dealt with.
And it's not.
And it's not, right? At the end result, nobody knew in the beginning. Nobody knew how they were going to fall on this. It was a really big decision. At the end of the day, and I mean, surprisingly so, I think Justice Barrett actually wrote the opinion and fell on the side of this is not a crime.
Yeah, that's kind of a stretch. I mean, a crime, I think, wouldn't that have to show like intent and how they used it and all that to become a crime? You guys know better than I do with this.
It's the way under the statute. If it's a close call, you got to give the defense the benefit of the doubt. It's called the rule of lenity, and it's a very old tenet, and it goes back to, I think, the English. And if it's a close call, you got to give the benefit to the defense, and that's kind of what they relied upon. It wasn't clear the guy could have access. So I mean, it wasn't like he was going to get off scotch-free. He's still going to lose his job and all. He's still facing.
Sure, abuse of access could get you in trouble, but yeah, like
bribery. He had bribery. I mean, it just under the federal statute, he wasn't guilty. And again, it actually does make a lot of sense.
Sure. Well, I mean, there are a lot of people probably listening right now, John, that think that that feels like some sort of a violation. But a crime is something, making it a crime, that's a very high bar.
That's what I was thinking. And I'm
he
just
was guilty of other stuff. He was guilty of official misconduct. He was from taking
right.
But in terms of looking up on the computer, he's not guilty of that.
And they really were looking at that particular act that hadn't been tested.
That's all they were looking at.
Yeah, that's all they were looking at.
And what happened with that? Was it appealed? And initially it was voted one way, but then it was overturned. Can you guys fill us in for the average people out here how that went?
I'm not sure how it went. I think the appellate division upheld it, but then it was overturned by the Supreme Court. I think that's what happened.
That is what happened. And
this was just argued this month, June 3rd or something?
I think June 3rd, the opinion came out. I think it was argued along a while, a bit ago. There's usually a delay between the actual argument and when the opinion comes out. But to me, everyone was waiting on that opinion because that impacts everybody in any job that has access to a computer and any level of sensitive information. Right. Law offices, right? We access information all the time. Is that illegal to access it for a purpose that's not related to our case? And that's true, again, for banks, for police officers. And I think we've all known police officers who've run somebody's plate or run something just for their.
I think it used to be rampant. You see a pretty girl driving, you run up, look up her light. There was actually years ago the New Jersey Attorney General had an Attorney General who was just focused on state troopers asking girls out who were driving.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, not a lot of people do, but they did. They had someone. And that's no longer the case, but yes, it's notorious. It was notorious.
And what happened with that?
I don't know how it turned out. Again, this was a long time. This is like 20 some years ago I heard about it over. But
I'm not surprised.
There's a lot of abuse going on.
Sure.
And I think it's also important. I had at least one comment just come in about Martin Van Buren, but we're talking about a police sergeant today from Georgia named Nathan Van Buren. So I know some people see the presidential thing sometimes, but this is not about a president. This is a sergeant. His last name is Van Buren. So.
Right. And then it's because it's now a landmark case. I think I was surprised. Was anybody else surprised besides me at the ruling?
Not really. But again, they don't want to expand on the criminal convictions. They really don't want to. It has to be clearly in the statute that you're guilty, and it wasn't that clear. So you have to give the benefit of the doubt to the defense. Established.
John, you were expecting that then.
I wasn't holding bated breath, but yes, I'm not surprised by the ruling. I think the decision 7-2.
Yeah, it was a majority. It was a clear majority.
Clear majority.
Yeah,
I wasn't super surprised. That sounds pretty harsh to turn that into a crime, because at that point you're going to be put away or run the risk of getting probation or something. That's pretty harsh.
The sense was by Alito, and Alito actually grew up in Mercer County, where I'm from. I grew up in Hamilton, New Jersey, and like a decade ago, I had a client who was a roofer. He had a speeding ticket or something. He was calling me. I was, it was funny. This guy calls me from Washington. He says, "Hey, I got to put a roof on my mom's house." He said, "Yeah, I was talking to him. It was really nice. I put the roof on his mom's house." And he said, "I'm from New Jersey, but I live in Washington. I don't come up that often." And it turned out to be Alito, who's, from what I understand, a very nice guy on a personal level. Is a very decent guy.
Well, I watched many people put roofs and additions on the Jersey Shore on houses, and they would all meet at 1 a.m. with socks over the hammer with the rubber band around it. And you get 20 to 40 men out there to put an addition on between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. And this was the old Italian way of avoiding zoning. And people would, "Where'd that cupola? Did you have that up there all the time?" "Oh, yeah, it's been up there for 40 years. You never noticed the cupola?" "No, it looks like, I swear that was not there yesterday, Monti." No, it was, it's been there. You're blind. It's like, okay. My grandfather used to have a little conversation with me about permits.
Cupola.
So
Pretty funny.
And never once was it a Supreme Court justice, though, I'll bet.
no. So yes, I was just reading from the Supreme Court. It said, although Van Buren used his own valid credentials to perform the search, his conduct violated a department policy against obtaining database information for non-law enforcement purposes. Yes, I think that's pretty surprising. But like has been said, that probably has been going on a long time. John said, people looking up others and snooping all in through their information.
The Roman centurions, I'm sure, were going through scrolls doing it.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know. Yeah.
No, absolutely. It's impossible that you get access to this information. It's impossible not to want to reveal it.
Years ago, things traveled by word of mouth. Right? Exactly. Think about what the computer brought to the world, the ability to get information so quick, to transmit information. Years ago, I mean, if you wanted to get news to Texas, somebody took off on a horse.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and even a lot of it,
a lot of that time to tell everyone that slavery was over.
Oh, yeah, right. It took a really long time for that to travel.
Yeah, but the police are notorious. I mean, it's funny. The state police do the background checks in New Jersey for everyone if you want a judgeship or whatever, and they have all this information on all the politicians. No one really wants to mess with them. And just to give you a case in point, we had a governor here, Christine Todd Whitman, who's trying to mess with the police pension. All of a sudden, a picture was leaked by the state police showing her assisting in an arrest of an African-American kid. So it's like, I mean, the police are notorious for doing things like that. I don't think how rampant it is, but it's an issue that they have access to this information, and some people use it as they're not supposed to use it.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like Grover Cleveland, when he was running, they, of course, accused him of fathering a child out of wedlock. And he made a bunch of comments and said, I actually had consensual sex with that young lady. We went out to dinner and back to my apartment. And so, thank you. I believe, there are actually many married men in Buffalo who have done things around here. I was the sheriff of Erie County in addition to being the mayor of Buffalo. And a lot of men pulled him aside and said, you need to shut your mouth like right now, man. You can't use that information, police information, to intimidate people in the election here. So it's getting kind of scary. When we come back from this commercial break, I was going to ask, where do you guys think this will now go forward into private business or corporations? Because Toni, you mentioned that obviously this was really easy to digest because it was a law enforcement officer. But when we come back, I was going to suggest maybe we talk about that.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, guys, we'll be right back. We're going to delve into how this case may actually affect private business.
Join former White House chef Marty Mongiello as he brings to life colorful stories about America's presidents and first families that have occupied 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest.
Is when screaming guests are lit on fire inside the White House. So I know that everyone's thinking what did he just say?
It's time to be informed and entertained with Inside the President's Cabinet. Visit the website today at www.insidethepresidentscabinet.com.
Well, Toni, coming back to you and bringing John back on again now about how like this might be used. You guys are experts at this, where people cite previous case law and judgments. What do you think is coming down the pike? What kind of case would we see next where somebody would cite this judgment?
I think the concern, I mean, I agree with something John said earlier. I mean, there would still be consequences, I think, within your employment, even in the private sector, if you engaged in this type of breach of protocol.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it goes without consequence. I think the criminality is really where this case is falling. And I can foresee it being an issue to a certain extent for people who come into access with corporate information, banking information, and the like, and letting the tax information and using that for their own purposes. Certainly, there's all sorts of mechanisms wherein having that kind of data would be useful to you. And I can see it being used as somewhat of a license to use the information as you see fit. But I also think that what John said is very important. I mean, it's not without consequences. I mean, it gives the sense, when you first read the opinion, it gives the sense that they're saying, all right, like while it was a bad idea, it's not criminal. I mean, because he didn't hack, he actually had, looked at something he maybe wasn't supposed to look at, wasn't for a job related reason. So therefore, there's no criminality here. But right. I think that gives the false sense of license to people reading it, that means they can just, turn around and do whatever they want with data, that even if they're going to misuse or abuse it, which is not the case. And it's not what the opinion's trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think.
John, what do you think?
Well, I think with Van Buren, the issue with Van Buren and why it got to the Supreme Court is there's another criminal aspect, which is the bribery, official misconduct. I mean, most of these cases are probably guys. Tony said a lieutenant whose daughter is dating some guy, which is questionable, and like looking up, or a neighbor moves in doing and they've got young kids and they want to do a background check to make sure they're not weird or have a criminal record. That's and again, the issue, if you do something like that, are you going to lose? It's non-criminal, but again, the police department's going to have a policy against that. Should a guy lose his job if he does it once and he has a momentarily weakness, he's worried about his neighbor? Probably not, but there might be some ramifications. He might have his pay docked. He might be forced on leave for a little while. There might be a red mark on his file. But the reason why, and that's usually probably what happens in almost all these cases. You're given a slap on the wrist and told not to do it again. The reason why this got that far is because this involved a crime. This involved bribery. So it's not going to be a carte blanche to the cops can go look stuff up on people. You still can't do it. There's still policy against it, and there's ramifications with your job if you were to do that and get caught. And it's very easy to catch people and things like this. Very easy.
Mm-hmm. What will make it a criminal act? What
Nothing will make it a criminal act. But if I go to my police officer, say my neighbor moved in, here's $1,000, please look it up, as opposed to can you just please look it up? They're giving $1,000 to the guy or something. Who knows? Even like I'm a barber and I give you a free haircut, that's technically going to be criminal.
Yeah, but no, because this information was essentially for sale, and that didn't change anything really.
Yeah, well, again, if there's money involved, and I think that's pretty rare, I do, but you never. Obviously, they give money to, so that's official. In New Jersey, it's official misconduct. You're facing not only going to lose your job, you're facing a couple years in jail. It's serious.
What about the private sector, John? I mean, if I give money to somebody who works at the local bank because I want them to check out somebody's account for me.
Well, there's no official misconduct then. But again, that person might lose their job. They might lose their job.
They might lose their job, but there wouldn't be any other kind of penalty for that.
No.
According to this, you're accessing the computer lawfully because it's at your desk and you're allowed to. There's no criminality for that. And I thought to myself when I first read it, how does that, I thought the same thing you were saying before, Marty, how does that impact the private sector?
I was thinking it might become a criminal act if it violates maybe a federal law like FERPA or if you violate HIPAA. Is there any possibility somebody abusing that could face a criminal offense? So they didn't receive any money, but they violated FERPA or HIPAA or Sarbanes-Oxley or Dodd-Frank in accessing.
Just the accessing, no. I don't think so.
Okay. And I think that's what the opinion is more or less saying. You know, in the accessing data that's lawfully in your possession, even for what may be unlawful purposes, is definitely not a crime. And in this case, they didn't even draw the, because that's where I thought it was falling. I thought they were going to draw the line at the money. Like I thought they were going to say, well, look, had he just like run the license plate as a favor for a friend, we don't see the criminality. But I thought maybe they were going to draw the line and saying, since money changed hands for it, and got paid to access it, that maybe that would be the bright line.
But again, you still can't. In New Jersey, give an example. New Jersey, it's what I know. If I were to, I need a background check on someone, and I gave a police officer $1,000, and we get caught for accessing information, he's not only going to lose his job, he's going to get indicted, and he could very well go to jail.
Right, for a totally different reason, having nothing to do with the Computer Act.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. We have some small acts here in North Carolina that are criminal acts. They're like a class 3 misdemeanor, you know, like defrauding an innkeeper, which would be not paying your bill either for food or lodging. It'd be interesting to see if somebody messed around on the computer to access that information and then tried to hide behind Van Buren, but actually engaged in the criminal act of defrauding an innkeeper. You know, then they could get them. They could get them.
But and say that doesn't apply. It's more of a theft. It'd be a theft charge.
Yes. Yes. So they might have to tell them at that point, like, this case for Van Buren does not apply because you actually stole, you know, money, and that's a violation of state law.
But yeah, but that would be, again, it's under the state statute, North Carolina. No, it wouldn't be federal.
Wouldn't be federal. Can you think of a federal instance like that has any kind of criminality?
I can't. I really don't do federal work, so I really can't.
Yeah, I can't think of one. I'm sure there's one out there. It'll be interesting to see going forward.
I'm sure we'll get comments of people on this.
Oh, they'll comment online. That's for sure. Well, we're coming up on 29 minutes and 10 seconds. Any parting notes? I know the next episode is about Ronald Reagan, so I'll just throw that out there for folks.
An ode to John's giant portrait.
Yeah, my grandmother had that painted for me. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And that's where the whole idea ultimately came up, to showcase John's giant portrait.
Yeah, well, I appear in Zoom with Court now, and I get comments on that all the time, Reagan. It's 90% positive.
And Marty, I mean, your episode on it is awfully good. I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Very looking forward to it.
It'll be fun. If you've never met the president nude in the White House, then it'll definitely be interesting. But for my buddy Skip Allen, the butler, it was like his first day, and he was like, honestly, the fun meter is pegged out at a 10. Well, thanks, guys, so much.
Thank you.
We'll talk to everybody again.
Bye. All right. Now.
Bye.